Once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. We're back at it again. Getting started this morning, analyzing the markets and taking a look at what's going on in the world economy and such. Looks like I think it's the New York Stock Exchange. One of those major indexes, you guys, is reclassifying the way it categorizes companies. Looks like once upon a time, Google and Facebook and those major companies were classified as social media high tech firms or whatever, and the ETFs classified them as such. Now it appears that there's what's called a communications sector. So you may want to look at this new communications sector in terms of how it is representing companies such as Facebook and those guys. For some strange reason, it seems to be making some sort of weird distinction between companies in the communication sector. The traditional companies were Verizon and AT&T and those guys. But by putting Google and Facebook and some of those guys in the communication sector classification, that adds a new twist to what communications is all about. So just a little interesting tidbit of information as far as the way ETFs and all those guys put those companies into those indexes. So what else is going on here? Not a whole lot, except you may want to take a look at this booming pot industry. The stocks that represent the pot industry, they seem to be taking off. Everybody and their brother-in-law is getting into that industry as well. So that seems to be something you may want to look into, even though it's being overhyped and probably overvalued at this point. Still something to keep in mind. After it cools off a little bit, it doesn't hurt to pick your choices in that sector, in the pot sector, the pot stocks. I think I read something about Aurora and another company. Can't remember the name of it. Starts with a C, I think. But anyway, there seems to be a few of them that are definitely attracting attention. Now, let's see, what else? Let's see, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Monty Henry, owner of DPL Surveillance Equipment. We're a full-service surveillance and security equipment company. We have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. We have 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. We have perhaps the largest inventory of items that not only can you buy, but you can rent and lay away as well. We have the largest accumulation of articles and podcasts and demonstration videos and such. And let me see, I better turn my phone off. I know someone's going to want to interrupt me. When you're doing something important, that's when people want to interrupt you usually. Anyway, we have the largest media library consisting of podcasts, blogs, demonstration videos, articles and podcasts, all those things. Go there, learn about cybersecurity, which is what we're going to cover today, cybersecurity, and then we're going to cover, we have covered cryptocurrencies, health and fitness, what else? Economics and finance, let's see, a number of other things, terrorism, anti-terrorism technology, surveillance and counter-surveillance, a number of things that we covered in the past. Let's see now, what else is going on? Oh yeah, we accept Bitcoin, and that includes Litecoin, Ethereum, Bcash, and those major four: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bcash. for now, those major four is what we carry. So you crypto millionaires, don't hesitate to go to our website and take advantage of using some of the profits that you guys obtained in the cryptocurrency space. We were there 4 or 5 years ago, so we know full well what it's like to benefit and to be able to use some of the cryptocurrencies when you're shopping. We use it. We use them quite often. Buying gas, groceries, dinners, you name it, comes in handy, definitely. As compared to fiat, especially, you get more bang for your buck with the cryptocurrencies, with the way they appreciate, especially over time, over the long run. Leaves the dollar way behind. We want to get away from the MasterCards. We want to get away from the Visas. We want to get away from American Express and Discovers. We just published an article 2 or 3 days ago talking about the $5 and $6 billion settlements from MasterCard and Visa to American Express because they were caught red-handed charging excess fees and such for processing the credit cards. Outside the United States, they're less dominant and they get away with less, but for some reason, the complacent Americans, especially the consumers, have been overpaying and letting the credit card companies get away with murder, basically. So don't fall for the gimmickry. You know, the rewards points are actually a bribe that allows you guys or keeps you guys involved with their this old antiquated dinosaur system, whereby you keep feeding into the system and allowing those guys to survive and thrive, as compared to pushing us towards a situation where we use Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrencies so that we don't have $70-80 billion worth of discount fees and revenue charged annually to merchants and businesses and retailers, because that's additional overhead that we don't need. We don't need to raise our prices to cover excessive charges and discount fees, settlement fees, service fees, batch fees. All these fees add up. We have to increase our prices, increase our costs, so the products and the services in the retail industry and other industries, they have to go up as well to cover all those costs. Besides, that's $700 billion in the remittance industry alone, and that's charged by companies like MoneyGram, Western Union, various banks who charge you a lot of money just to send money back and forth. It's ridiculous, and you guys need to wake up and stop contributing to that and find out how to use and promote and get your children to develop for blockchain and Bitcoin in the future, for the future. So anyway, let's take a look at this particular article. This article is actually about not only cybersecurity, but artificial intelligence. The name of it is How AI Can Help Stop Cyberattacks. Again, how AI can help stop cyberattacks. As hackers get smarter and more determined, artificial intelligence is going to be an important part of the solution. As corporations struggle to fight off hackers and contain data breaches, some are looking to artificial intelligence for a solution. They're using machine learning to sort through millions of malware files, searching for common characteristics that will help them identify new attacks. They're analyzing people's voices, fingerprints, and typing styles to make sure that only authorized users get into their systems, and they're hunting for clues to figure out who launched cyber attacks and make sure they can't do it again. The problem we're running into these days is the amount of data we see is overwhelming, says Mathew Newfield, Chief Information Security Officer at Unisys Corp. Trying to analyze that information is impossible for a human, and that's where machine learning can come into play. The push for AI comes as companies face a huge increase in threats and more sophisticated criminals who can often draw on nation-states for resources. More than 121.6 million new malware programs were discovered in 2017, according to a report by German Research Institute, AV-Test GmbH. That is equivalent to about 231 new malware samples every minute. Of course, nobody thinks AI is the cure-all for stopping threats. New operating systems and software updates introduce unpredictable risks, and hackers adopt new tactics. Excuse me. Is AI a silver bullet? Absolutely not, says Kuz Ludwig, Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at IBM Security. It's a new tool in our toolbox. Because of those limitations, reliance on algorithms is a little concerning and in some cases even dangerous, says Raphael Marty, Vice President of Corporate Strategy at cybersecurity firm ForcePoint, which is owned by defense contractor Raytheon. Still, most cybersecurity experts believe that AI can do a lot more good than harm as hackers get smarter and more determined. Here are a few examples of how cybersecurity pros are using artificial intelligence and what's next for the technology. Detecting malware. Traditionally, security systems look for malware by watching for known malicious files and then blocking them, but that doesn't work for zero-day malware, threats that are unknown to the security community. AI is helping to solve that problem and identify new attacks as soon as they appear. The systems analyze existing malware and see what characteristics the files have in common, then check to see if potential new threats have any of those traits, says Aviva Latan, a cybersecurity analyst at Gartner Incorporated. That is the method used at security firm CrowdStrike Incorporated. When a user clicks on a suspicious file, the company's tools scans hundreds of different attributes, such as the size, content, and distribution of code in the file, then runs them through a machine learning algorithm that compares them to the company's malware database and determines how likely the file is to be malicious. The reason why machine learning works so well for malware is that there's so much data out there, it's easier to train the system, says CrowdStrike's Director of Product Marketing, Jackie Castelli. One big hurdle for this approach to identify malware is false positives. Currently, some AI systems classify a lot of benign programs as threats, which is a big problem given how many attacks companies face and how much time it can take to investigate each lead. But most security vendors that focus on laptops, mobile phones, and other devices are working on the problem, Ms. Latan said. Getting detailed data on users, organizations, in a range of fields, including government, retail, finance, are trying to keep unauthorized users out of their systems by combining machine learning with biometrics, studying physical information about users like fingerprints and voices. With biometric systems, people access services by talking or scanning a part of their body instead of entering a username and password. Machine learning can be used to analyze small differences in these characteristics and compare them to data on file, making verification precise. For instance, financial services firms such as Fidelity Investments, J.P. Morgan Chase, Charles Schwab Corporation have deployed biometric technology for customer service that scrutinizes hundreds of voice characteristics, such as the rhythm of speech. Nuance Communications Incorporated, which develops speech recognition software used in mobile phones, has started to incorporate behavioral biometric information, such as a person's vocabulary, into its machine learning algorithms. I just want to say voice recognition, I don't know if it's quite there yet. I think they're making a lot of progress, but at the same time, there was a clear demonstration with some financial firms, Bank of America or some other big banks, I think, there was indeed some twins who fooled the voice recognition system to allow access to ATM machines or something like that, okay? So again, online and on YouTube, there was a clear demonstration of how two twins fooled the voice recognition software, and they didn't know one person from the other. So theoretically, one person could indeed access someone's account unless they corrected the problem. So that was just something I want to bring to you guys' attention. When voice and behavioral data are combined, the system is precise enough to tell identical twins apart, says Brett Baranek, Director of Security Strategy at Nuance. That is because characteristics such as vocabulary and frequency of pauses would differ even if people's voices sound the same. So anyway, I just warned you guys of this, despite what Brett Baronick is saying from Nuance. One hurdle for biometric technology is selling users on the idea. Researchers at the University of Texas at Austin Center for Identity have found that many consumers are wary of biometric authentication because of concerns about privacy, government tracking, and identity theft. That's a legitimate concern, mainly because the more information that's accumulated in central databases, such as biometric information, that's very important. So we're going to get some noise in a second. When you accumulate a lot of biometric data in a database, fingerprints, iris scans, whatever it is, if you put that information into a database like the, who was it? I don't know, a Defense Department, it could have been DHS or some Department of Homeland Security, I can't remember. There was a government database, the Office of Personnel Management, OPM. When the Office of Personnel Management database was hacked about 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, I think, that is what was stolen: biometric data, fingerprints, whatever. All that type of biometric data was stolen. That means it's out there in the wild on the internet, and hackers could actually use your fingerprints, your iris scans, your voice recognition, or your voice to access these systems. So, not only accumulating the information is a big deal, but making sure it's secure is also another thing that these companies have to make sure that they're responsible for. And then also what happens just in case it is stolen. Mr. Baronick says many U.S. consumers haven't been exposed to biometric technology. U.S. consumers haven't been exposed to biometric data technology, unlike many in European countries, and recommends organizations that use it address concerns and questions that customers might have. Many banks, for example, offer online explanations about how it works and how they use encryption to protect stored biometric data. I think that's very important. As long as the data is encrypted with the absolute best encryption, and maybe distributed or something in a blockchain format, if that's applicable, so there's not one central point of weakness or attack. Sifting through alerts. A typical large corporation receives tens of thousands of security alerts each day warning about possible malware, newly discovered ways to exploit security flaws, and ways to remediate threats, according to cybersecurity experts. So companies are investing in AI to help determine which alerts are most important and then automate the responses. Companies can't handle all the security alerts, and they're missing things that are really important, says Gartner's Ms. Latan. If you look at almost all the data breaches that took place in the last 10 years, there's a security alert that notified them, but it was buried at the bottom of the list. For example, the breach announced by Equifax in September 2017 was partly blamed on a flaw in the Apache Software Foundation's Struts software program. A patch for the vulnerability was issued several months before the incident at Equifax occurred, but the company failed to address the issue. The breach compromised personal information belonging to about 147.9 million users. I just want to say this was a little bit more than something buried at the bottom of the list. Actually, you guys, what happened was Equifax obviously ignored the opportunity to address the problem. If you issue a software patch and for 2 months your security people don't catch it and implement it, then that's not something being buried at the bottom of a list. It's not exactly buried under too much information, for instance. It's negligence. It's reason to fire someone or expose them to civil or criminal liability in this case, because it was definitely issued. They should have known. They should have implemented it, so it wasn't buried. They purposely, intentionally ignored it, according to the way I'm reading it. Anyway, the breach compromised personal information belonging to about 147.9 million consumers. A spokeswoman for Equifax said in an email that the company has since hired a new Chief Information Security Officer and Chief Technology Officer, and has increased its security and technology budget by more than $200 million this year. About 3 years ago, International Business Machine, IBM, or International Business Machines Corporation, started training its Watson AI system on cybersecurity with the goal of helping security teams manage the influx of threat information. The system combs through alerts, recognizes patterns, and determines things such as what malware is involved, whether it is related to previous attacks, and whether the company is being specifically targeted. That way, security teams can focus on the most likely threats and put the rest aside. We want to use AI to do all the investigative work and essentially give the analyst a research case, says Ms. Lodewyk, adding that IBM determined that its own security analysts spend about 58% of their time doing repetitive work such as studying alerts. We're aiming to take all of that 50% away from the analysts so they're able to deal with a uniquely human task, he says. More than 100 companies currently use Watson for cybersecurity, including Sri Lanka's Cargill's Bank Limited and Swiss financial services provider Six Group. Like most AI, the technology took years to develop and encountered bumps along the way. For example, Watson at one point concluded that the word IT, or IT, was a name of the most dangerous malware because it appeared so frequently in malware research, Mr. Lodewyk says. Tracking down enemies. One common struggle for data breach victims is figuring out who attacked them, because criminals and nation-state hackers use a number of techniques to obfuscate their identity. Some security researchers and analysts believe machine learning can be used to attribute attacks, which can help companies defend against them and prepare for future incidents. Security systems can mine and analyze information on registries and online databases to find clues about the infrastructure that criminals set up to launch attacks, such as domain names of websites and IP addresses associated with the devices they use for hacking. When hackers leave all of those traces, you create a behavior footprint that you leave behind that is unique, says Chris Bell, Chief Executive of Dishkin Advanced Technologies. The firm uses machine learning to analyze these footprints, determine who is behind an attack, and who their next victims may be. The technology is still in the early stages, but customers in the aviation, utility, and financial services industries have used it to spot pending attacks and automatically block IP addresses associated with criminal groups, according to Mr. Bell. So that's about it for that particular article and podcast. Just want to throw in that AI seems like that's going to be a major tool out of all the tools that security researchers and experts are going to be using. But we need to caution ourselves in that if AI is going to be part of the solution, someone's going to use AI as part of the problem. In other words, as one AI system is learning what the other AI system is doing to mitigate cyber attacks, that's additional information that can be used. In other words, pitting one AI system against the other. The word IT, if it's an innocuous word or term that Watson is going to be ignoring in the future, some other AI system used by the hackers could probably use a program called IT or IT more effectively, at least over the short term, since Watson and some of the other AI systems are going to be ignoring it. So just a word of caution and that there is no foolproof silver bullet solution. This is advancing the field of cybersecurity by using one additional tool. Okay, and then what I think I'm going to do is there's some updated information also on Equifax, and not only were hackers probing that database and such, but it looks like the Chinese may have been monitoring and spying on Equifax prior to the disclosure of this data breach. So there's a little Chinese angle added to the Equifax story, and we'll probably include that as a subnote in this particular article or podcast as well. So anyway, as we like to say at the conclusion of every podcast, you guys keep your eyes and ears open and stay safe out there. Okay, we'll talk later.